Today I'm with Connell Barrett, who is somebody that I've known for a very long time because he approached Real Social Dynamics and said he wanted to write some articles about us. He eventually went through a lot of our programs, covered some stories for AOL and other news outlets, but he's also somebody who stayed in touch for many years. It's been almost, what, a decade now?
8 years.
8 years. And so now you're working on a new article, a new story, you want to do an interview. I said, well, let's do that in combination with some fun questions for the YouTube video and channel.
Absolutely.
I think it's really cool that you're actually here particularly because one of the things that is like my new passion is that I got into golf about 2 years ago.
Okay.
And then when we first met, I wasn't really into golf. Now I have such an addiction. I picked it up to make 10,000 hours tracking every hour, like Malcolm Gladwell,
Yes.
10,000 hours of mastery on CoKingdomGolf.com. And so right now I've done about 700 hours.
Okay.
And yeah, it's going to take a while. I think at this rate, it'll take me something like 30 years.
What are you shooting? What are you shooting these days?
I'm shooting in the 90s.
All right.
It's not bad. I mean, a couple of years in.
What is your favorite shot to pull off when you just nail it? What's the kind of shot that makes you go, oh, I love this fucking game?
An accurate 3-wood shot, long distance but accurate, and that's a huge challenge. But
most people say driver. Why 3-wood, not driver?
Because with the driver, I have a pretty consistent swing, and the ball goes pretty consistently a certain path. As long as I warmed up properly, I'm fine. But with the 3-wood, I feel like I have like something like a 50-50 shot that might go too far in the wrong direction.
Okay. So we've got you hooked.
Consistent. Yeah, and it's great because it's a chance for me to do it as a day-to-day activity with my wife. She's picked it up. We went to Butch Harmon School of Golf on a weekly basis, got to get great training, started organizing corporate retreats for our team and friends, and it's been cool.
Butch is the best.
Yeah.
Butch is the Owen / Nick of golf instructors. He and Ledbetter. He's right up there.
He really likes Amber a lot too.
Oh, I'm sure he does. I'm sure he does.
Yeah.
Actually, it's funny you brought up golf because golf and game are the two of the most challenging and rewarding endeavors I've ever undertaken. So difficult, yet also enjoyable and fulfilling and frustrating and awesome and sometimes awful, at least in the early stages. So I think that's why I got so into golf and so into the idea of pickup and game as RSD teaches it. And just for your audience, 8 years ago, I took a boot camp thinking, all right, I'm gonna look into this whole picking up girls thing. I'd read the game, and I thought it would be something I'd do for a few weeks or a couple months. I was just newly single. And 8 years later, I'm still intrigued and into the subject matter because I didn't know it was such an incredible form of self-development. It was such an amazing way to grow as a person, regardless of whether or not you wanted to date multiple girls or just have a girlfriend. And I guess my first question I wanted to ask you for the article I'm working on is when did pickup and game become an avenue of self-development for you, for Owen? Did you realize it was going to be like that at the start, or was it just about, I want to meet girls?
When I got into this, it was because I had a fraternity brother who approached me, and he told me about this because I was always asking him questions about what to do with girls. And he said, hey, you should check out these guys on the internet that are talking to discussion boards about this. And unbeknownst to me, he was actually one of the people in this group called The Lounge. He was one of the 100 people who was in that group. That means he was super dedicated. He was actually meeting some of the people in real life. I didn't find that out until I actually joined The Lounge. I got deep into it as well. And these discussion groups don't exist anymore, but I got into this because I was organizing parties in my fraternity, and I was a social person, but I didn't know how to get girls interested in me other than for social value or social proof or what have you. I mean, I could develop friendships, I could develop this and that, but I couldn't get them interested in me for dating or some kind of a romantic relationship. It was more like, you know, this guy's kind of cool and fun. Or I would get some girls interested in me, but I didn't know how to properly follow up with those girls, meaning that I would usually just expect them to try to make a move, or me, trying to do random things, and expect me not. I didn't know when to kiss a girl, know when to touch the girl, what to do on a date. I mean, you read all these books written by armchair professors, and I was really interested in really just getting a girlfriend at the time. I mean, that was like my New Year's resolution every year. I came from a less socially active lifestyle than I have now, where I have a big social circle. I came from a family where my father, he grew up in the Philippines, and the friends he had in elementary school, the same friends he had today. And he kind of grew up and had that really closed mentality. These are your friends. You keep your long-term friends. They stay with you. And that's cool. And he was also trying to hook me up with the daughters of his friends. But I wanted a different path. I wanted to have an expanded social circle. I wanted to meet people and have an active social life outside of this historical path that my dad had. And so I didn't really have those skill sets until I got into college. And going to your question about the self-improvement aspect, when you study something like dating and pickup, the things that blew my mind and got me from the point where I was curious to a point where I was like, wow, this is really interesting, was that there's two things. The first thing was that I didn't know what to say. And there's so many people at the time who were just talking about lines and scripts and routines. I was memorizing a bunch of them. But this thing that made it kind of weird was that if you keep saying the same thing in the social circle, you'll get blown out because it's too awkward. And I was in a college campus environment. It didn't matter. It was a really big school. But the concepts that you need to be successful isn't from, say, scripted game, but like a self-actualized game where you're like a different person, a person that's, I mean, in generic sense, in media sense, people say it's all about confidence, but it's really about something that is more, say, less arbitrary. It's something that is about you being able to believe in yourself to the point where you believe that things are out, possible that you didn't really believe is possible. You can think outside the box in different ways. And you're also able to develop yourself into a different kind of person. So the thing about this is that it made me study different things. So some people who are talking about game, we're talking about how they're really good at, say, NLP or poetry or hypnosis, or they're athletes, or they're doing crazy things like extreme sports and talking about that, and traveling the world and adventures in different cities. And it got me to engage in traveling around the world, skydiving, doing crazy adventures, studying weird topics of communication, this and that. And that kind of just broadened my mind to the point where I can now communicate with all sorts of people from all different aspects of life. So it kind of got me to the point where I thought outside the box. Now, it wasn't just the fact of trying new things at an activity level, though. It was about thinking outside the box in terms of what you could get away with it. Like, when can you kiss a girl? Can you kiss a girl when you first meet them? Can you kiss them like an hour later, at the end of the night? Can you not kiss them until many dates later, and still have them interested in you, and them not put you in your friend zone? And just trying all those different things. Or not even just kissing. It's more about what can you say? Can you relay your intention? Do you have to be completely indirect and hide your intention? Can you always say what's on your mind? And just try being so radically honest that you're out there. That's more of where I am now today. It was, though, the experimenting of all these different things that people did, but actually doing it and then trying it and reporting about it that made us an industry. Because there's so many people out there that write typical things like, oh, I'm dating a girl. She likes it when I buy her flowers, take her to the spa, take her to the movies, take her to a restaurant. From the dating standpoint, it makes sense. You're in a long-term relationship. I'm with my wife. I do date nights, take her out to do all these things. Of course she likes it. But what about building attraction? Some girls have that love language where they like gifts and stuff like that. But that doesn't mean that it's attraction. That's something that you'll do for a girl that you share love with. But meeting a girl in a bar, nightclub, or walking down the street, or in your classroom, it'd be super awkward if you're just suddenly buying her flowers and stuff like that, and all these things people are talking about. Or the extreme things that guys who are married will do. So I read about a guy who was married and organized a super date where he organized a scavenger hunt and this and that. Now, you do that and a girl that you're first dating, it's going to be creepy. It's more about you being able to connect with that other person and being cool. And I think a lot of that comes from the fact that when people say, hey, why'd you got into game? What is game? It reminds me of when Russell Simmons was asked a question as the CEO of Def Jam, built like the hip hop industry. He said, So Russell, what do you think about hooking up with all these groupies? He goes, well, first of all, what is a groupie? A girl that's inspired by your music and is interested in hanging out with you because she thinks that what you do is really cool. I mean, yeah, I mean, that's how I see game. I see, what is game? I mean, some people define a groupie as a slut that follows rock stars around and has sex without being in a relationship. People can define game as tactics guys use to have sex with girls and have girls convinced that there's something that they're not. I mean, can game just be guys who are self-actualized and becoming better in self-actualization to learn how to attract girls properly? I think that game is a skill set, learnable skill set. And I believe that most journalists, probably mostly unbeknownst to them, are propagating an incorrect message. I think a lot of people are saying, by even just showing to the world an excessive amount of movies and TV shows where attraction comes from guys who are dating these beautiful girls, being James Bond or rich, or they're powerful or adventurous or saving the world to get the girl. That's what attraction is. Right. I think it propagates a false message when true attraction requires you to create an emotional connection, and you can build that through your conversation, your physical connection, through many different things that you could teach. And that stuff that we teach, the content that Owen provides, that is what I believe what game is. Mm-hmm. And so I think that when you try to frame game in the wrong way, you could ask a question like the media does and says, how did you get from game to self-actualization? But what if game really is one and of the same? Mm-hmm. I believe more firmly that when people talk about game, the reason why you'll ask a client, hey, are you more interested in pickup or are you interested in self-actualization? And you're really asking the question is trying to determine what are the differences between the two when I believe that game is really just a focus of process of self-actualization, but focused on the part of attraction. Mm-hmm. It's also about communication, because people will define what is game. I mean, you said, man, this guy's got great game. You can talk about business. You talk about your physical athleticism. It's about overall, when people are using game in those references, I believe it's all the same, whether it's pickup or sports or business. I think it's about you just having a high level of skill set in a particular skill. And in this skill set, the art of attraction. I mean, picking up a girl is something that everyone's had to do if you're married or in a relationship. So even if you're not in a relationship and you're picking up girls just for one-night stands, it's the same skill set of actually having the confidence to approach the girl for the first time, or even in a soul circle, it's fine. I think you can be introduced to other people, or even an online game, having the ability to attract someone to actually want to meet you in real life.
I think the night before my first boot camp, which was 2009 with Ryan, I remember I was to the marrow in my bones. I was so nervous. I had never cold approached a woman before, and I had never done it until that night. And I didn't realize at the time why I was so nervous. It wasn't just anxiety. For me, and this is in part what I'm writing about, we all men, I believe, have this basic need to be loved, to find out that we're lovable. And I'm very lucky in that I was raised in a family where I received a lot of love. So I didn't want for that. But I'd never received romantic love. And it became a vicious cycle in my 20s and 30s where I didn't have the confidence that women found me attractive. And that led to these false beliefs and a downward spiral of relationships that I stayed in too long because I was coming from a place of scarcity. I got married when I didn't want to get married because I felt like, oh, well, she's the best I can do. This is the best I can do. So the very powerful thing to me about what RSD teaches men and what I learned from Owen and some of your other instructors is you find out you have value. You have romantic value to offer the world. A lot of women will like you. Some of them won't, many of them won't, but a lot of them will. And that's a very empowering realization about yourself. And I didn't even know I needed to experience it until I started going out and realizing it.
I went through the same path of not believing in myself, because I think a lot of guys will view attractive women in terms of like having to be in the same league. Like if you have to be a certain level of physical attractiveness, but at the same time, we have a very fat, out of shape instructor named Luke who hooks up with beautiful girls, dates them, and has a beautiful child with a beautiful girl. And it just goes to show you it's mostly about communication. Now, on the other hand, we also preach a lot about health. I think Luke needs to get his ass in shape. If you're watching this video, Luke, get your butt in shape. I think that, I mean, one of the things I did is I lost 40 pounds in 2 months just by cutting out carbs and sugar, which, I mean, as an Asian, not eating rice and noodles is a huge challenge. But cutting out bread, tortillas, any kind of like fiber-ish products, and then sugar, like ice cream, candy, chocolate, just doing that. I don't even understand how people could get fat, or why the media will even propagate now that being fat is attractive and all you have to do is not eat unhealthy food. Yeah, you're going to get sick, get to the point where you're almost diabetic. That's supposed to be attractive? No. But I think that like what we're talking about is the extremities of things. Because other people will refer to like focus on just the nerds who are into pickup. That's why I would look at our client base. I'm like, most of these guys are pretty cool people. Mm-hmm. I mean, I hang out with some of the most successful and powerful CEOs that you'll see in Forbes at our programs. I'll also hang out with guys who are the typical client, our client. So people say, who's your client? Who go to your programs? I'm like, well, look at the bar. The average person in this bar is the average person at our program. Right. The average client that I would look at, I would say most of our clients are in their 20s and 30s. They're college-educated individuals, upper middle-class professionals, making like $80,000 to $120,000 a year. You get a lot of people who are college students making, no money, but you also get a lot of people who are also uber rich. So of course there's extremes. Now, I think that we attract this more intelligent audience overall because a lot of what we talk about are very well-defined, well-organized intellectual topics that can be applied not just to dating, but to business and all other aspects of your life. I created a program called RSD Founders Club and this YouTube channel, just talk about how the skills you learn in pickup can be applied in business, your social circle, your social life, and I believe very firmly in that. We've seen clients that have even come to us here in Vegas. We had one client who was the CEO of Advanced Nutrients, Big Mike. I did an interview with Big Mike, and he told me that he wanted to give me a lot of money to send his sales staff to Las Vegas. He sent 24 guys. We had this program called Vegas Immersion. People pay $850 a week. Mm-hmm. And they go through our training. Right. And it's actually taught by Luke. And it's an awesome program. Guys go out every night, get coaching, and it's focused on the aspects of pickup, but you learn so much developing soul circle and also social skills in general. The reason why he sent them to our program, though, it was not because he wanted them just to learn how to pick up girls. When you have an average sales guy who's making $40,000 a year and you ask him, hey, why are you making 10 times more than my average sales guy? And he says, well, I'm making these commissions because I know how to pick up girls. And that kind of just caused attention. So he's like, well, if this guy's doing it, let's send all our sales guys to this. And so we got his top sales guys, his CSO and CMO and all these guys out there. And we decided to train them. And he enjoyed the program so much that we eventually moved into a mansion for several years together in Los Angeles and did a lot of joint activities, adventures, built a social circle together. It was pretty awesome. It was pretty cool. I have a video with him on my YouTube channel as well. It was called Mastery Mentorship at Marijuana Mansion. Yeah, something like that. But it was interesting. I think we attract people that are also CEOs and people that are self-actualized because a lot of the principles we talk about are about how you could control social dynamics and lead a situation through believing in yourself and having the confidence within, projecting that to other people, but doing it with a sense of humor, personality, and integrating the stories of your life and building upon it in a really interesting way. But showing also about the physicalities and demonstrating what it looks like as opposed to just preaching about it. Because so many people are in their 40s, 50s, and 60s as professors or intellectuals, they write books, but they're not actually doing it anymore. They're talking about the theories of what they did when they were much younger. As opposed to us, we're still focused with that youthful energy on continually developing our curriculum and creating that amazing content. I think that's why our clients like us, and we release that content on our YouTube channels and on rsdnation.com.
RSD has evolved a lot over the years in terms of the philosophy that Owen and the other instructors propagate. And I want to ask you about the old days with Owen. Can you think back to when you first met him, and what moment stands out when you realize, whoa, this guy is not like everybody else who's in this world. He's different, special, wants it more, hungrier. What are your first memories of Owen?
Well, he reminded me of me, because I was addicted to this process of learning game to the point where I was doing nothing but focusing on it all day, going out, trying out new stuff during the daytime and nighttime, and writing about it on the internet, on these discussion boards. And when he applied to just join our discussion board, anyone who wants to do it, I had to interview them, and I interviewed him. And we ended up talking for 4 hours about all the stuff that we were doing, because he was doing nothing but this all day long as well and writing about it. And he was writing even more than me, and he was a much better writer than me. And I decided I wanted to meet up with him. And when I was hanging out with him for the first time, it was 3 months later, after talking to him on the phone every day, never having met with him. It was interesting. It felt like I was just sitting next to a guy, but I was on the phone with him. We were on the car ride on the way to, I drove up to Canada to meet him. And on the car ride back home, I got an email. And that email said, hey, I read about some of your stories, and I'd like to meet with you. And Tyler said, well, you tell him that you'll go, but you have to bring me. So I said that. And when I went with him, we met this kid. This guy was one of the strangest guys, one of the nicest guys, but one of the strangest guys I've ever met. He had a tattoo on his arm. He said, for a good time, call my mom. Underneath that was his mom's phone number. He got it from a prank show where they knocked him unconscious, and they requested his parent guardian signature, name, phone number, and they put that on his arm. And because he was brainwashed to believe from all the images he saw in the media that in order to get a girl you have to be famous, he would show that as a symbol of fame, and as a result he ended up being a 30-something-year-old virgin. So we were trying to teach him how to get his first kiss, and he got it after 2 weeks of just going out with us. And I was like, wow, this guy Tyler, he really knows his stuff, you know. It's funny because we also it was on my first time hanging out with him for 2 weeks straight, and I kept calling him Owen Cook, Tyler, going back and forth, Tyler Durden and Owen Cook.
What set him apart from other guys?
Owen is somebody who, when I explain Owen, he's like Neo in the Matrix, where you can see the code behind the code, because he would look at an interaction and he would break down that interaction of, say, like just people interacting for 5 minutes. He'll break it down into like their inner belief systems, what might have happened to them in their past to like interact a certain way, physicality, whether they might be together or not, and just be like really spot on, and how he would deal with that interaction. And then he would approach those people, and then the interaction would be like very congruent. And he was not as skillful or as intelligent in terms of field experience, but he was naturally had a baseline intelligence and a way of seeing social dynamics behind social dynamics. And I think that's why he was able to absorb so much knowledge so fast and become the man he is today.
Sounds like Sherlock Holmes. He can look at a situation and make all these deductions from just observation.
And it's not just social dynamics. It's also social situations, business situations, all sorts of things like that. Yeah, really, really interesting. And he'd evolved a lot too. He came from a broken home, and he had to learn self-actualization for the first time on his own, and he did it. You know, he ran away from home early on, became a young hustling entrepreneur, bought a house at a young age, and thought that because he bought a house, girls would fall in love with him and want to date him. But it's not about that. It's not about power, money, fame. Now, you have a situation now where, you know, Owen is, you know, rich, successful, and famous. And yeah, girls want to date him, but they also wanted to date him when he wasn't. And we have a lot of those videos where even Owen purposely shaved his head and purposely made himself very fat and posted on his YouTube channel, proving that you can still have pickup as a skill set. It's not a situation where you could give up. And a lot of people have come to us and said that they thought that there's this concept of being in a league with the girl that you want. And if you're not there, you're not there. And by defying that message, we save lives. People have said that they thought about suicide and they didn't do it because we saved their lives. And it's not that uncommon. I think that inspiring hope in other people and proving that anything is possible is really powerful. I think that's why one of the things that I like to do is call the interactive exercises we have in our boot camp Mission Impossibles. Not because they're impossible missions, because you're doing things that you think are impossible successfully. Mm-hmm. An example that I always say is an exercise I used to do when I was teaching boot camp over a decade ago, well before I was married, where we would have a guy go onto an escalator at a shopping mall. And his goal was to approach a girl or a guy, anyone, on an escalator and prove that you could talk to them and get them to want to talk to you and engage in you by the time you get at the top of the escalator. And the reason why is because when you first meet someone, you have 30 seconds to meet any person. And if you're, say, trying to pick up somebody, or you're trying to network at a networking convention for business, and you just walk up to that person, you need to be able to establish a reason for why that person wants to connect with you, add some higher value, add some interest or spark in you, and you need to demonstrate that with your personality or something. Mm-hmm. And the skill sets that we teach will demonstrate how to do that. I mean, one of the seminars, exercises that we had to do at Summit this year was with a guy named Bill Walsh. I did an event with him, it was on Friday night, where he had people walk up to Bill, pretending that he was Richard Branson. And they would try to approach him as Richard Branson to get his attention. Then we had another guy named Larry Benet come up right afterwards, who in 30 seconds got Richard Branson to give him his personal contact information, and then eventually they established a business together. And the ability to do that comes from having game, having skill sets. I think a lot of people just don't know how to establish basic friendship with people outside of accidentally doing it in a social circle. And so what Owen had as a benefit was the way to break down what that is and explain it in thousands of hours of free YouTube videos and then condensing it into short 3-day boot camps like the one you took. Because it takes a lot of skills to explain thousands of hours in 3 days. Mm-hmm. I mean, I remember someone said something like, what you could explain in a page, if you could explain it in a sentence, you're like a genius. So that's true, but at the same time, you need to also elaborate. Right. So we provide a lot of value on the internet for free to help explain those concepts.
Can you talk about the moment in time when RSD decided to shift from the routines, from the kinds of canned routines a lot of people read about in the book, The Game?
Yeah. That all stemmed from the book, The Game, being released, and Owen saying, now we can't do routines at all. It's going to be totally played out. Right. It's just going to be like those corny pickup lines. And having scripts was the thing that we kind of relied on as training wheels, because we didn't really have our own identities. Right. In order to really be able to riff spontaneously and have that improvisational skill set, you got to understand who you are really well and develop that into just the kind of person that you love and care about, not like an identity that you hate, an identity that you actually love. And I think anyone could love themselves even if they're not happy. You don't necessarily always be happy. I know you look at guys who are like rock stars in heavy metal. They're not necessarily happy people, but they still are attractive to girls. Why is that? Because they have rhythm. They're passionate about their hatred or their love. But that passion is contagious because what you feel, other people around you feel. Now, the concept of conveying those emotions to other people and the reasons why routines work isn't because of the routines themselves, it's because of the emotions that you instill in other people through your communication, or the value that you could offer other people through knowing how to find out how you could help other people and at higher value, whether it's teaching someone something, sharing a new experience with somebody that they want to experience, giving them access to people, connecting people to other people, or just having a great personality or sense of humor, figuring out what people's blueprint, as Owen says, or what people want and giving it to them is a key to networking. It's also a key to dating.
Well, but when the company switched from canned to improv, natural game, that must have been a pretty scary moment.
I think that the issue that we had was when you really know yourself, there's a book called Radical Honesty.
Mm-hmm. Brad Blanton.
That's right. And that book had a lot of influence on our instructors, including myself. I think that the concept that you could just say what's on your mind is important. Now, one of the things I think that it didn't really elaborate on is that in pickup or dating or attraction in general, or even networking, especially high-end networking, saying what's on your mind is cool, but if you don't have good things to say on your mind, it's not so cool.
Right. Being transparent sounds great, but what if what you're showing the world is somebody with a lot of negative feelings?
That requires what we call self-actualization. Right. And more importantly, identity level change. I remember I had a boot camp client. He was the son of an oil tycoon, and he was a negative person, and he enjoyed like going to a bar and just making fun of people and just throwing ice from his drink at people, and he enjoyed that more than talking to girls. But he signed up for a dating program because he felt lonely. And I made him do this exercise where I took a piece of paper and I said, I want you to draw with crayons who you think other people see you as in an image representation. But on the other side of this piece of paper, I want you to draw who you think you are deep down inside. And the images he drew were very, very different. On the side that I want to focus on is how he saw himself. Sure. You know, he drew himself as like this cave surrounded by vultures in the middle of nowhere. And he said he kind of like hated himself. I'm like, well, if you look at other people, like say Trent Reznor from Nine Inch Nails, they'll sing about this stuff passionately, and they have a happy life, and they're successful in life and stuff like that. It's not about like necessarily just getting rid of who you are, the identity level change process. It's accepting who you are and adding to it, and opening your eyes to what else is out there so that you could become happy. Because you want happiness in your life, fulfillment, self-actualization, and spirituality go hand in hand, where you want to be more in touch with that inner self. Because you have to actually love yourself. I mean, you could hate and be angry, but as long as you love yourself, it's fine. And he realized that was a process that he needed to go through before he was going to attract the right partner in his own life. And he started traveling around the world and doing things he's never done before, engaging with people that he's never engaged with before. And then he eventually got a girlfriend. I think that is super important.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've coached a little bit, and there's no better feeling than going out with somebody who is shy or uncertain about themselves in social situations, and helping them realize that they can be themselves with other people. And not everyone's going to like you, but the people who really like you are going to love you if you're congruent, if you have positive energy, if you know how to be present and be there with them. And I think that's what has kept me so interested in this whole area so many years into this, is because we never stop growing. And it's really freeing to go up to somebody and express who you are and find out if there's actual natural chemistry that you have. And if there's not, that's fine too. Yeah. You know, it's okay. You can walk away. Not everybody's going to like you, but the people who really will like you, I've learned from Owen and other instructors, they're going to really you could meet somebody who'll be a friend for life, or a partner for life, or just be in your life and have a very meaningful relationship.
Yeah, I think that also if you're focusing on a long-term partner, you should also focus on having those common values. one of the things that we developed within Real Social Dynamics is that we want everyone to have a positive outlook on life and develop trust and mostly loyalty. And if you have those, you could learn skills, regardless of what the skill is. Because if you're part of us, if you're a friend, your family, you know, we have your back, we make sure you're okay and stuff like that. It's a very different way of looking at things. And I think that it's a core value that I think that requires that, because if we didn't, it wouldn't be a place that I would want to even be in. I know that one of the advisors I have is Tony Hsieh. He has a company called Zappos. He sells shoes on the internet. He sold to Amazon for over $1 billion. And at one point, his company was struggling because he had all sorts of investors that want different things and a different way things were supposed to be done. He ended up buying 100% of all their equity just so he could control the culture and make it a fun place to work. But the reason why I say this isn't because of the business implications of having that. It's because when you're in a long-term relationship or you have friendships, you need to figure out what it is, the values that you value, because these are the people you want to have around you, what you want. If it isn't, you're not going to be happy.
I want to ask you about the Julian situation, the controversy from...
We call it Julian Gate.
Julian Gate. Yeah, Julian Gate.
We call it Julian Gate, you know, and it was an internally created term. You know, we always make fun of the situation. I guess I should probably, before just stating a story, because I could talk about that for hours, probably get your question.
Yes. Well, my question is, how much damage, if any, did Julian Gate create for RSD in terms of the image?
Julian Gate was a huge impact on my life because it allowed me to realize a situation where a guy who was highly misunderstood by the media could get so highly misunderstood. I don't know how much of the background that you know, but basically my understanding of the situation is from the perspective of not just from what was out there in social media, but also what was going on behind the scenes. You had a situation where one of our instructors, who was a pickup artist, had a van, and he got beat up because a journalist wrote an article. And then Julian made a post on YouTube saying that he was going to tweet to offend these journalists. Jokes, and also very politically non-political. I mean, like it was the political elements of what was implied from his jokes was not good, and I guess as a result of that, it led to him offending a lot of people, because what he was doing was trying to show how far you could go and then post crazy things on his Twitter feed. Julian was, right. Yeah. The reputational damage that came from this was immense. Julian got added to so many banned country lists. Right. And that cost us live programs, but more importantly, it also cost us relationships with vendors. And that's the kind of thing that can hurt a company easily, because governments and whatever will look at this. And the reputation damage, you know, was also severe, but changed, because after 3 years, if you create great content, you'll change things. So the same people that were attacking Julian, which were feminist organizations that were under the belief that pickup was synonymous with violence towards women, which is what was the main focus, was that he partnered with feminists and actually created a self-improvement program that made him over $1 million in sales. But that's because we had to do a lot of work building a tribe of loyal followers, so that when the LA Times, for example, writes a negative article saying that RSD is about things that we weren't about, because we also had this hack organization named Anonymous that was attacking us. We had a situation whereby, you know, you had like 3,000 something plus comments of people defending us on the LA Times article, for example. Like, dude, did you not even look at their YouTube channel? Because I think a lot of the problems stem from people taking one post and cross-posting another. And the reason why it affected my life personally is it made me want to go to law school. Because I didn't understand how people could write straight fabrications. So one of the things that happened was that people were taking this post in this fake Twitter account, which said, pay me a few $1,000s, I'll teach you how to successfully rape people around the world to make it look like we're a global terrorist organization teaching hundreds of thousands of men around the world how to rape people. And quoting these fake Twitter groups and then I'd get exclusion letters for Julian based upon those Twitter posts that he never created. Not the YouTube channel or the jokes that led to that, but I think that it was crazy.
I think there's definitely a perception among people who know what pickup artists, know the term pickup artist. There's a low, they're bottom feeders, they wear gold chains, they use tricky tactics and techniques.
In a lot of journalists, especially because journalists will, I mean, I know you're a journalist, but I know from working coverage, I've done coverage for a movie studio for 2 weeks as an intern. And your job is to watch other articles from a lot of other stories to find out what could be good source material for your articles and find out how you can make a unique spin. Mm-hmm. But they're not necessarily doing all the research themselves. They're trying to save time because they have a deadline. I believe that a lot of people don't even know what pickup really is. And when they find out about it, it's like, oh my God, I didn't even know that existed.
Right.
I think that Julian Gate, especially being questioned as Time Magazine's most hated man in the world, allowed us to get some fame. So I think that like 20% of the world now knows who we are. 80%, the vast majority, still don't. And the 20% that do know just knows like that slight memory from 3 years ago. What was that? And then they do their research. And even the people that did hate Julian and us, eventually they'll watch enough of our videos and buy.
Right.
So you had a situation where the truth always gets out there. And our email list became 16 times larger, and our revenue grew 3 times the size of what it was from 3 years ago. We were able to do that because we have so much free content that if one journalist writes one article, which is a summary of other people's articles, plus some minor amount of research, we have so much actual content that people will watch that if they're passionate about the topic, that will change their mind. It also was the basis behind why I took most of the last year off to focus on developing my YouTube channel, which turned to the idea that I wanted to create business education from the ring game to making want to be more entertaining so it could hit the mainstream and change their mind through infotainment, because I don't think people would just want to read what we were watching. They were watching because our stuff wasn't entertaining enough. And the stuff that they thought was educational, I thought would come from a legit source like a news journalist. So I said, well, I can make some music videos. I hired a hip-hop artist. I wanted to learn how to rap. I wanted Owen to rap with me in music videos about RSD and then about the game and then mostly about business education, how he developed this business. And we had this mansion in Hollywood Hills we were at. But we were getting so good at this with music producers and making music videos at our house. I said, let's make this to a full Broadway musical. So I spent a ton of money, enough to buy a small house on just doing networking events and research on musicals. I met every musical producer. I met producers from every Broadway musical today. Got invited to go to the Tonys. Sent dozens of my music staff to go see Hamilton to be able to our story, make music videos for us, and make samples.
So you're not throwing away your shot, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
You are not throwing away your shot.
If you want to see me on stage on October 26th of this year, 2017, sign up to see Chicago on Broadway. You'll see me perform on stage.
Is that right? Mm-hmm. Papa's Broadway debut.
That's my Broadway debut. I've gone backstage to Hamilton. I have a lot of friends in Hamilton. In fact, I even sent members of their staff to LA to work with our board and producers of all sorts of other really interesting shows. But while working on the New York networking for like a musical. I also got into hip hop so much in music. I got so much that I even got a 3,000 something square foot house in Vegas at a country club, put in a hip hop coach and music producers who crashed there, famous ones, and developed music with us. We have it 5 minutes from my house, from where we are right now. And my video guy, Chris, he lives there. And I network with all sorts of people. You know, I've been showing our treatment of our story and synopsis, which includes the Julian Gate story, plus the story of how he built the company. And I thought it'd be really good as a musical. But so many people are like, dude, why don't you make a film? You've spent millions of dollars on camera teams, camera gear. You have your own gear and camera equipment. You make videos every day. So I was like, maybe I should make this into movies. So I started going on Charity Buzz and winning charity auctions, donating thousands of dollars to charity to meet famous movie producers. One of the things I bought was a charity auction opportunity to work with Sony Pictures' top movie producers, including Stephen Tisch, who owns New York Giants, and Todd Black from Escape Artists. They produced Forrest Gump, Pursuit of Happiness, 7 Pounds, all sorts of great movies. Both also about self-actualization and overcoming false perceptions, which is the same concept of what we are, and identity level change. And then they were like, you know what, this is not really necessarily even a movie, because you have so many field reports, interesting stories from the transformations of your clients becoming successful leaders in business and in their own personal life and dating life. It should be a TV series. I mean, whether it's a scripted show that is fully sung through hip-hop musical TV series, or if it's, say, a socially conscious Entourage meets Silicon Valley, but pickup artists, that's the story we've been working on. Owen wanted to make a documentary as well, and we've discussed many different concepts. And I expect that we will, because we've started making documentaries. One of them was about the making of this musical. We've also started making documentaries about the Julian Gate situation. Okay. You know, the most hated man.
Do you see Owen, or if you can speak for him, does Owen see himself becoming, doing events where it's dating and attraction is just part of the story, or not even the story? Is he going to move more toward a Tony Robbins type of a template?
In order to grow from a $10 million company into a $200 million company, you got to track a larger net. And as a result of that, we are going to not only offer programs that had a combination like we have at Summit, where a lot of his YouTube videos, where we talk about business, self-improvement, and dating in the same program. We're going to also have programs that are solely focused on those topics. I mean, if you look at even not just Owen, who obviously talks about that a lot, but even Max or even Julian. I mean, Max just launched a program called Fearless about how to overcome your fears. So we are definitely focusing on that. We're focusing on growing into 4 mega niches. Of course, the bread and butter for us and our foundation is dating relationships, but also business and wealth, health and fitness, and spirituality and higher purpose. With the last one being something spearheaded by Owen. Owen is traveling less and less every year. Yeah, he's still teaching programs, but if I look at his schedule, the number of LA programs have gone from every weekend to, for the rest of the year, I only saw 2 programs on the schedule. It's a huge change, because Owen's cutting back a lot less on that stuff to focus on what I think that he really should be focusing on, because we developed an awesome team that could focus on a lot of the content and pickup, and he's still going to always be a part of it. We need that. It's helping a lot of people. It's great content. We need to also, though, expand upon what he's doing to hit those people, because I was having a conversation with Tony Hsieh, and he was asking me a question that another friend of mine, Ryan Alice, he created Eye Contact. He asked me a lot also. Both of them always harp on your customer lifetime value, that length. And he said, what is that for you? I said, it's about 18 months. On average, a guy will stay a customer of ours for about 18 months. He goes, well, how do you make that longer? Well, get a guy for 18 months into our programs, they might get a girlfriend. A lot of them, maybe like a third of them will. And you lose a lot of customers because of that.
Right.
So as a result of that, what else could be interested? Well, they could be interested in these other aspects. And so we increase that customer lifetime value from a business perspective as the business structural system engineer. That's the kind of thing I have to think about.
Yeah, Owen definitely, I would say maybe 80% of his videos now are about things that have nothing to do with women or little to do with women. It's about inner change, inner growth, and actualizing yourself in ways that, sure, women are a part of it, but it's much more, widespread and more about just becoming the best version of yourself. He might not even talk about girls in a lot of these videos. Mm-hmm. And he's going to be doing fewer programs, do you expect?
Absolutely. Yeah. Not overall, but fewer programs focused on pickup.
Right.
And he's going to be focusing a lot more on these other concepts. I could see Owen doing an amazing program on business because he is extremely savvy in terms of business. And I'm surprised, especially from somebody who hasn't been formally educated with an MBA. His intelligence level is off the charts in terms of business. On the other hand, he also reads so many books per month that the library that you see here, it's a huge library that you're in right here. He'll easily read that many books every year.
Right.
I mean, it's why he's able to do so many book recommendations. He's highly educated. He also networks with the actual authors of these books.
Right.
We have access. I consider myself to be a super connector, and Owen is somebody who's met a lot of really powerful people as well.
Just two last things from my perspective for
Sure.
what I'm working on. If you want to wax eloquent, the Owen who was portrayed in the book The Game, mm-hmm. fair, unfair, truth to it.
Owen was portrayed, I believe, as the main antagonist in the book The Game, purposefully because Neil viewed him as a threat to his future endeavors as a pickup instructor, which he created a business after a year, and it was really dumb because he was trying to create it without even mentioning his pickup company in the book, thinking that it would give him more credibility that he wasn't a biased person in his book, and he was the whole time. And also try to give more credibility to who at the time, no longer, but at the time was his best friend Eric, who also competed against us. I mean, that house in the book, Project Hollywood Mansion, we had so much money, millions of dollars pummeling through that house. Every bedroom in the house turned into a competing company until I had to get everyone kicked out of the house. And we eventually got rid of that house and got a new one. Owen's field reports were true. There's true field reports in there. And a lot of them were even published without his permission, because Owen never agreed to have his stories published in a book. But at the same time, Owen did some great stuff. He worked with me in the house and this and that. But it was a biased perception, that's for sure.
Well, the Owen
there was definitely also some complete fabrications. I remember one time, Owen and I taught a program in Seattle for something like 30 students. And I remember that Neil wanted to create controversy. So he had one of his friends who was a promoter at a nightclub called Highland or something like that, at the Highland Mall, come over and be like, I saw you trying to steal business from our friend and this and that, and you took them to LA to this club and you hid this from your schedule because we were sharing profits. And I was like, no, actually, I actually just got off the plane. Here's a copy of my boarding pass. He goes, oh, you could have printed it out on a printer. And I'm like, Neil, are you setting this up just for your book? Why would I, suddenly out of nowhere, have a boarding pass to cover for this random story that you just made up? And then, of course, he puts it in his book that I was doing this crazy thing. And so, yeah, I mean, there was obviously some bias there.
I ask in part because when I met Owen in 2010, he was completely different than the
life
perception.
transformation.
I think that he has made some life transformation. Owen has always been interested in self-improvement since I've met him. But I remember when I first met him, he was a guy who was angry at the world and didn't care about relationships he developed around the world because he never thought he'd see people again, even in his own city, but even in cities nearby. Now, Owen's the CEO of a global company, along with me as a co-president. And if you meet somebody in Helsinki or, Miami or Hawaii, living in LA, there's a chance that that person could have an impact on his life, or he might see that person again.
Right.
And he realizes that we're in a different age. I mean, we're in a digital era where anything you could say on the internet could make you a public figure. Like, look at Julian's situation. One of the things about the thesis I'm writing is about how the legal ramifications of being a journalist allow anyone to write anything about public figures. And understandable, because the laws were created to prevent seditious libel, or because it's seditious libel, where you had a situation where people were talking badly about the crown or talking badly about public figures and scared about doing so. And so they wanted to be able to write about them. However, in this day and age with technology, anyone who has a Facebook, a YouTube, an Instagram can be considered a public figure. Now are you at the point where because they're a public figure, you can say anything about them as long as there's no proven malicious intent? And how can you prove malicious intent? I mean, that's why I believe Julian Gate went out of hand, because you could write crazy things like, this guy's advocating having sex with lions and all sorts of crazy things that were printed by reputable sources like Vice, or having someone like the Global News write that we're a global terrorist organization teaching rape around the world, where thousands of men were being in 270 cities in 70 countries, learning how to successfully rape girls and get away with it for a few $1,000s, and making cartoons about it on BBC. These are things that are just not cool, and these are things that actually happened in the news. So it's one of the huge passions, and that's why the first class I took at Harvard was the media constitution, the Fifth Estate. And so I was joking earlier with these guys looking at the library saying, what's your fun reading? And I said it was that book. I couldn't put it down. And I realized instead of just taking that one class, I was going to get a degree. But also, I also come from a background where continuing education is a huge value. Fortunately, I share that value with Owen. I come from a background of 2 educators as parents. Mm-hmm. My dad as a university president, and my mom as a teacher. So yeah, that's been there. But I mean, the continuing education is something we advocate for all of our students. I believe that even if you, and I think that also helps, because in order to really actually even want to learn from us, you got to be coachable. You got to be willing to learn.
Right.
So I think it's a really important skill.
Well, one of the transformative moments of my life was the last night of Miami alumni program in 2011. And it was a night the course of my life changed, because I was about ready to quit game. I was just not having fun, not getting the kinds of results I wanted, and I just couldn't let go of the outcome. Okay. And Owen took me under his wing and pushed me on a crazy 60-minute mission in the Fontainebleau Hotel lobby. And I had this incredible breakthrough. It was like something from the Tony Robbins movie. It was like, oh my God, I didn't realize I was capable of this. And it was he spent so much time with me that he didn't have to. I wasn't a paid student, I was a volunteer, but he took this time and took me under his wing. And it's such a different persona, or not persona, but such a different person than is depicted in the media, than was written about in the game, than who pops up for like a moment on the evening news when they talk about pickup artists and they show this bearded guy.
Well, I agree with you, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to meet you, because the typical journalist hasn't spent years of his life with us and can actually tell an accurate portrayal of what we're talking about here. The typical journalist isn't you. I have a spreadsheet from my assistant with 800 people that want to do interviews with me from mainstream outlets, from CNN to Forbes to whatever, but if they're not somebody that I know who has actually done their research, why would I interview somebody who's just going to come in with having done no research themselves? They haven't been to our live programs. They are there just to get a quick interview and then try to verify other people's source material, whereas you actually are the source material.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Thanks. Well, one of my favorite Owen quotes, I'm sure it'll be in my article, is, I like how self-aware he is. He doesn't pretend like this isn't a little bit unusual, this whole world of learning about success with women. And I know you know the quote. He says basically, is it a little weird that guys come and pay to learn how to have success with women? Yeah, it's a little bit weird. You know what's weirder? Is not knowing how. And I'll close with this. My first boot camp with Owen, I remember he sent me into a set. It was super cute brunette, super cute blonde, a big muscly guy, and an open chair. And he sends me in and I sit down and I open and I say, hey, what's up? My name's Connell. Had to meet you guys. I never would have opened had I not been on a boot camp because I'm thinking the guy's gonna punch me. And I sat down and did my open, and the brunette leaned forward to me and said, oh my God, do you know what you are? And I wasn't sure where that was going. And I said, what? She said, you're normal. You just like came over and sat down and said hi like a normal person. And she pointed to this guy behind me, a fellow ginger in a black shirt, I remember him. And she said, that guy's been staring at us for like an hour. It's creeping us out. So that is the guy, Owen said. You know, it's weirder to not know and be the guy staring at girls than to have gone through a learning process and learned, hey, I can walk up to anybody, say hello, and see what happens. And that's a higher state of mind than just being the guy who doesn't talk to anybody. That's
awesome. That's a great story. I'll remember that one.
It'll be in the.
I've heard Owen say that quote a few times. I didn't remember it, but as soon as you said it, I was like, I remember that.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a little bit unusual, but I think it should be. I think one of the thesis of my piece I'm working on is that learning game as it's taught now and as it's taught by RSD is the best undiscovered form of self-development. Men don't realize this is a way to change and transform. It's not for everybody. It's totally not necessarily for everybody, but it's for a lot more men than who might realize it.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, true.
I love the healthy messages that come from that also, and the ability to uplift humanity. I would love to produce a TV show, a scripted show, but of true stories from people involved with RSD that can actually show what that looks like. And that's one of the reasons why we now have this 6-story mansion in the Hollywood Hills in the center of all these movie producers, next door to Leonardo DiCaprio and Appian and video teams there. Because we're in the center of Hollywood. And at the same time, I'm going to be spending 40 hours a week at that house, at the office, with Owen, working on the business and in the business in operations as the president of this company, and also doing that other stuff as a side stuff only after I've done that 40 hours full time. So it's definitely going to be side to the business, core business itself, because the core business is growing and requires full-time attention by me. But it is a passion of mine as a piece, because I agree with you. That message is lacking. And whether it's you, me, or someone else who gets the message out there about how this can help other people, it needs to be out there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it's changed my life for the better, and I wouldn't change a thing.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Cheers. Let's go have dinner, man.
I'm honored that you let me sit down with you. This was a blast.
Awesome. Good times.